All right, let's get right into it. When you hear the words biblical apocalypse, what pops into your head? You're probably thinking falling stars, mountains crumbling into the sea, the sky itself rolling up like some ancient scroll. It's some of the most dramatic and, let's be honest, confusing stuff you'll ever read. But what if it isn't about the literal end of the universe at all? What if it's a completely different kind of language, pointing to something else entirely? I mean, just listen to this from the book of Revelation. It really sounds like the absolute end of everything, doesn't it? The sky is just gone. The very ground we're standing on is shifting. It's powerful, it's a little terrifying, and unpacking what that might actually mean is exactly what we're going to do. So that's the big question on the table. Are we reading a literal blueprint for the future destruction of planet Earth? Or are we reading a symbolic story about a massive spiritual shift? Let's start digging into the clues. Okay, so to even begin to get to the bottom of this, we have to get on the same page about the kind of language we're dealing with. This isn't like reading a modern newspaper. We're stepping into a very specific, very ancient style of writing. And that style has a name. It's called apocalyptic language. Now, the most important thing to get is that this dramatic, world-ending language was basically a tool. Think of it like a literary special effect. The prophets would use it to show just how monumentally important an event was here on Earth, like the fall of an entire empire or a huge change in God's relationship with people. And this wasn't some new thing that just popped up in Revelation, not at all. Prophets like Isaiah and Joel, writing centuries earlier, used the exact same kind of imagery, shaking earth, a sun going dark, to describe the downfall of nations like Babylon and Egypt. So right from the start, we see there's a pattern here, a precedent for this language being symbolic. Okay, let's dive into our first major clue, and it's a really specific event that happened at the exact moment of the crucifixion. It's an event that mixes a real physical earthquake with an incredibly powerful spiritual symbol. Here it is, right from the Gospel of Matthew. At the very moment Jesus dies, this massive, heavy curtain in the temple, the one that separated the holiest part of the temple from everyone else, it rips completely in two, from top to bottom. And notice what happens at the exact same time. The earth did quake. There it is, that classic apocalypse-style imagery happening right there. So what did that torn curtain actually mean? Well, according to the book of Hebrews, the veil was a physical symbol of Jesus' own body, his flesh. The veil was the barrier that separated people from the direct presence of God. So the tearing of Jesus' body on the cross created a new and living way right into that presence. It's a perfect example of a physical event representing a massive spiritual reality. So the main point of this first clue is huge. You have one of these key apocalyptic events, an earthquake, happening at the same instant that a profound spiritual symbol is fulfilled. The barrier, the wall between heaven and earth, was torn down. Symbolically, heaven was thrown wide open. Now for our second clue. This one goes right back to that strange image from the very beginning, the idea of the heavens being rolled up like a scroll. And the first thing we should notice is that, again, this idea isn't new to Revelation. The prophet Isaiah used the exact same metaphor hundreds of years before. This is a big, flashing sign telling us we're dealing with a well-known prophetic symbol, not a literal weather report for the sky. The meaning behind this is actually pretty simple and kind of brilliant. What do you do with the scroll when you're done reading it? You roll it up. The story is complete. The message has been read. It's an act of completion, of finality. It's finished. So, according to this interpretation, the scroll being rolled up represents the Old Covenant, that whole story, the entire system of laws and rituals that was the old way of relating to God. The cross, then, is its completion, its fulfillment. The old story is finished, rolled up, making way for a completely new one to be opened. And this is where everything starts to click into place. All these seemingly random cosmic symbols, the earthquake, the torn veil, the rolled up scroll, the idea here is that they are not describing different events in the future. Instead, they are all pointing back to one single reality-bending moment in time. This is really the key that unlocks the whole puzzle. Instead of looking at this like a checklist for the future, this perspective asks us to see them as different camera angles, all focused on the exact same event, the crucifixion. There's symbolic descriptions of the spiritual shockwave that rippled out from the cross. Let's just run through it. The quake, Matthew tells us a literal earthquake happened at the cross. The veil being torn, that same passage shows us the way to God being blasted open, the powers being shaken.
The Apostle Paul in Colossians writes that the cross defeated and spoiled the spiritual powers. And the old order being removed, the book of Hebrews talks about God shaking heaven and earth to remove the old system and establish his unshakable kingdom. It all comes back to the cross.
So, if the cross was the great apocalyptic event, what does that mean? What kind of world did it kick off? Because this is where the whole interpretation shifts from being about an end to being about a radical new beginning. And this is really the ultimate takeaway. The apocalyptic language wasn't describing the end of the physical planet. It was describing the end of an age. It was the end of a world that was defined by separation. Separation between God and humanity, between heaven and earth. And what replaced that old world of separation? A brand new reality of union. In this view, heaven is now open because that barrier is gone. The old way, the old scroll is rolled up and finished. A new, permanent way to God has been opened up for everybody, forever. It's a message of ultimate connection, not ultimate destruction. You know, this quote from the book of Hebrews just sums it all up perfectly. The whole reason for all the shaking, the symbolic earthquakes, and the moving mountains was to remove everything that was temporary, everything that could be shaken, so that the only thing left standing would be the permanent, unshakable kingdom of Jesus. And all of this leaves us with a pretty fascinating and, provocative final thought. This interpretation suggests that these central apocalyptic events the prophets were all describing, that great shaking of heaven and earth, wasn't a prediction about our future, but a symbolic description of the past. Could it be that the single biggest end times event in the Bible already happened 2,000 years ago at the cross?